I am terrified. I am terrified for the future of my own country. And the more I think about the results of the 2024 election, I am terrified of my own country. You see, I have a congenital heart defect. I was born with a hole in my heart, as well as major arteries in switched positions. At 3 months old, I had open heart surgery. I was fortunate to live relatively symptom free for the first 35 years of my life. But in 2017, on the night before Christmas Eve, my heart randomly started pounding. My wife, then fiancée, brought me to the local ER, where I remember my heart rate being 250 beats per minute. I remember the doctors placing conductive pads on my chest and back and injecting me with a sedative. I distinctly remember the panic and fear that I was going to die that night. It was horrifying. Then I don't remember anything. My next memory is from a week later. I had been placed in a medically induced coma for a week, specifically so that I would not remember being intubated and airlifted to a specialized hospital, and having my lungs drained of the fluid they accumulated. I awoke in New Penn's hospital, initially thinking I was in the Star Wars universe, which might have been humorous if I wasn't beyond confused and in intense pain from the desert that was my mouth and throat after not having liquid in my mouth for a week. I wasn't allowed to drink, though, because after being intubated for a week, you have to relearn how to swallow. I was only able to suck on a small damp sponge on a stick until I was able to swallow without accidentally inhaling. This isn't the end of my ordeal, though, and life since then has been very difficult, with several moments where I was certain I was going to die. Those could be stories for another day, though. The reason I bring it up is because I had insurance. At the time, I was a high school teacher, and through work, I had insurance. However, eventually my condition made it so that teaching was no longer viable for me. Had Donald Trump been successful in repealing the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, and my wife's insurance through her work not been there as a backup, I likely would be dead right now, because I literally cannot afford to be alive without the protection of the ACA. And that means my 2-year-old daughters would also not be alive. Well, now Donald Trump has been reelected, and there will be no safety nets to protect us from his impulses. No more dissenting voices or staff who refuse to comply with whatever he commands. And Donald Trump, regardless of how you felt about his 2016 presidency, is not the same man he was then. He is clearly now free of his inhibitions, as exemplified by him publicly pondering the execution of political rivals, or musing about the penis of a deceased professional golfer, or, as he did at his Milwaukee rally, simulating performing oral sex on his mic stand. I am not making that up. I know it sounds too absurd to be true, but it happened. And if you don't care that you will never be able to unsee it, you can easily look it up. So when Donald Trump, who has both claimed he will and will not repeal the ACA, is reelected, I feel terrified, especially since he already has tried to repeal it. What if my wife loses her job? What if she wants to retire? Are we all doomed to work until we die just to keep our insurance? Especially if Medicare gets gutted too? This is what's proposed in Project 2025. I am terrified that Donald Trump is inherently unpredictable and no longer restrained by competent advisors or his own inhibitions, or thanks to SCOTUS, the rule of law. I am terrified for my own life, that I will not live long enough for my daughters to reach an age where they will be able to remember me. I am terrified for my daughters themselves, not only because they have fewer rights than their mother did growing up, but what if, God forbid, one of them develops a chronic illness or is injured in an accident? Are they then condemned to live in insurmountable debt or, just die? What if one of them has an ectopic pregnancy and needs an emergency abortion, which she no longer can get because Donald Trump signed into law a national abortion ban? Yes, I'm aware he said he would veto such a law, but how can you take Trump at his word when he constantly contradicts himself with meandering streams of consciousness and behaves erratically? Additionally, he is quite old, and his replacement, absolutely did say he would pass a national ban on abortion. Back to my point, I am also terrified for the countless Americans, and even just humans around the world, who will be subject to his whims. Several hundred thousands of Americans already tragically perished as a result of his inept handling of COVID-19. And that is why I am terrified of my fellow Americans, because you re-elected this man at the peril of every American. Because I can guarantee you that countless more Americans are going to suffer and die under the rule of Donald Trump. Americans who tried to warn everyone, Americans who just aren't politically interested, and Americans who are ardent supporters of their dear leader. And while people are dying due to the actions of Donald Trump, be they planned or just on a whim, he will not apologize. He will not offer sympathy. He will not care. And worst of all, he will not stop. He will not stop. Thank you.